Everyone on YouTube. YouTube will be a delayed cast. So we're simulcasting on Heckle and YouTube. YouTube will be a private cast only to the Gab fam. And you guys are not seeing this live, you're seeing a recording, but with Heckle, it is live. And I was just talking about how I am in the midst of the PhD research. I am using Gemini in an interesting way. Uh, I actually open up multiple copies of Gemini, and each copy is a higher resolution and smaller section of the question. So it gets broken down and broken down and broken down. And as I move through windows up to the third or the fourth Gemini, I'm analyzing one line of the maths and turning that into a page of proof, so I can understand deeply and to the granular level what's going on. Once I get that, oh, Clan Diver's gone. Sorry. Once I get that going and understand it, then I can close that Gemini window, move to now the third window of Gemini, and it's now an expanded section where I needed to know the really difficult one-line section to be able to understand the next section. And then I understand that section, and then that section's part of the bigger section, which was in the second Gemini window. And then I'm able to understand the more complex mathematics because I now understand the smaller topics that were in that larger topic. And then I get to the final one, which is only part of the original question I was trying to solve in the first place. So that's sort of how I do it. It's like, for example, imagine a sentence in Greek and you don't read Greek, let's just say. So then you go to Gemini and say, what's this sentence say? And Gemini will say, it says this. And you say, okay, now the next step would be to open another window and cut out one word of that sentence and say, what's that word mean? And then it will tell you what the word means. But then you still can't read the actual letters. So then you go to a third Gemini window and say, what does this letter mean? And it'll say, oh, that's alpha, that's pronounced as A. And then you do that with each letter. So then you finish with A and you're still in the third window of Gemini, the third copy. And you then say, what's the next letter? And then the next letter. So you figure out what each letter is. Then you can go back to the second window, which was the one particular word. Then you know that word. Then you do the second word, and then you open a third window again and go letter by letter to understand what each letter represents. Now you know the second word, and then you do it for the third word and the fourth word until you have the whole sentence. Then you go back to the original Gemini, which was, what's this sentence? But now you know every letter, every word, and now you know the whole sentence as well. So you can see what each word translates as, what each letter translates as, and then even though the words will have their own individual meanings, you'll see what it means in the actual sentence as well. This, of course, is subject to Gemini, assuming it doesn't make an error as well. So you've got that problem. So you might say to some degree of confidence that you understand what this sentence means in Greek now. So now if someone says, do you speak Greek? Well, no, I speak one sentence of Greek. I was doing this manually back in 2019 because I had no computer access or anything. So I was using this was for Italian, not for Greek. I did do ancient Greek for a month, but then I just stuck with Italian. I just looked up every word, and then it was easier to do because the letters, I had to actually look up the pronunciation because the pronunciation was slightly different for a lot of the words. So you got to figure out which ones are like, you don't say falsi, you say falsi, for example, or amici, and then you know that the C is a CH. And then in the plural, I think amiche, so there's a CH which becomes like a K sound. And you start to learn those things, and then over 2 years, ho cominciato di parlare italiano, so you just started to learn how to speak it, and you start putting it together bit by bit. So I took that type of technique, and now that I've got access to AI, I'm doing that with those advanced math concepts. And if you ever want to feel stupid, this is how you do it, right? You look up advanced mathematics and think, what the hell is going on? But it's a similar process where I'll take a question and then break down the question into each of its parts, and then break down those parts to understand what the symbols are. And so you open a window of Gemini for each subset. It's like you're zooming in each time. So the first window is the maths question and Gemini's answer. The second window would be the individual points in that question and what those points mean. and the proof as to why it means what it means. And then you go into the third window where there are terms that you don't even understand, so that you can't even do the bits of the question of window two. So window three is what do these terms mean? And the beautiful thing about it, South African. I have been told that many times. Someone on Heckle just said, asked me if my accent was South African. I have been told that many times by people in Australia. No, I'm from Sydney, Australia, born and raised. Um, but I grew up in Bankstown, where my accent by the time of 18 was, oh my God, bro, I swear to God, cuz. And it's South African in a way. Oh, I speak good English for an Aussie. That's what one South African said to me once. What was I saying about the accent? I realized I was going to have to modify my accent because it just sounded to the Australian version of I don't know what to say. No, it was horrible. It was something that had a stigma attached to it and was correlated with lack of education, lack of respect for the country, etc. And that's not necessarily true, but because I recognized that that was the perspective, or that was the perception that people were interpreting, I thought I'm going to have to get out of that accent to correctly represent what it was that I was, or what I was not. I think that was probably the key. And so, in the process of modifying my accent to something more acceptable, it's turned into whatever this is, where some people say it's South African. I've heard British, I've heard those different types of things. But it might also be, I'm not sure if it's also because I speak other languages. I've gotten many people. You say much people. I have a friend who says much people as well. And I keep telling her it's many people because people are countable. So the word is many. But I do have many people saying South African. No, no, that's cool. That's cool. It's interesting how language can a new dialect can emerge based upon errors that people collectively make within a subsection of the population. And you'll see that happen. For example, when Italian and Spanish and French and Romanian and Catalan and Castilian all were diverging from Vulgar Latin, and they all develop their own individual errors, which become dialects. So, if you were around people who say much people instead of many people, that would become over time um, uh, what do you call it, acceptable, an acceptable dialect. And then, 100 years down the track, some people in the old region are saying, look at them, they go much people in their version of English, and we say many people. So it's quite fascinating, to be honest. Veramente è molto fascinato. I don't know if we say fascinato, molto fascinamente. I don't know. My Italian's not good enough. What is the nationality of your passport? It depends on the passport. I have two citizenships. I am a citizen of Australia, born in Australia, and I'm also a citizen of Lebanon. Um, and but I am not um, an Arab, which some people conflate Lebanese with Arab, which is not actually true. We are Canaanites um, with and I've done a DNA test on both sides of my family. I'm purely Semitic, all the way as far as we can go back. You can hear the Arabic. That's amazing. Yes, yes. So we are Arabic speaking, but it's not our native language. Our native language is Syriac, which is a very ancient form of Aramaic, which is still spoken in churches, and it's quite similar to Hebrew. I learnt Aramaic for, I think, 6 months or so back in 2017. I don't remember much of it now. تحكي عربي. Someone just wrote in Heckle تحكي عربي in Arabic saying, do you speak Arabic? Even though in Arabic it would be تتكلم العربية, but he's saying تحكي عربي, which is a dialect, which talking again, we're saying about much people and many people. We have here a dialect um, which is very removed from actual classical Arabic, to the point where most people who are born in Australia, even if they can speak Lebanese, they can't understand Arabic because the languages are so different. أنا من المغرب. So he wrote, I am from Egypt. أهلا وسهلا. There you go. I should clarify, when I was talking about the origin of being Semitic in Lebanon, this is not all Lebanese people, of course. We have Arabs, and we have Armenians, and many. Oh, sorry. I said that wrong. He said Ana min al Maghreb means I'm from Morocco, not Egypt. Egypt is Misr. Sorry about that. Thank you for correcting me. There you go. So we have two people here, and just so that you know, on Heckle, I'm also talking to my Gab fam, which is a private YouTube channel I have just for people who've stuck by me over the last 7 years or so. But I've been invited by someone called Michael Aud to join Heckle, because apparently that's something that's similar to Periscope. I used to be on Periscope and have lots and lots and lots of followers. I think we had up to 30,000 people watching us on a few of my episodes, which was nice. It was fun. There was a lot of questions and a lot of answers. Je parle français aussi. So I speak French as well. Parlo italiano anche. Speak Italian as well, but not very well. Non è molto bene. Très bien. Yeah. Tu parles français aussi parce que tu viens de Morocco? Yeah, of course. So I'm saying you speak French, of course, because you're from Morocco. Yeah, which is not surprising. And what else can we talk about, ladies and gentlemen? I was just talking about how to teach yourself using multiple copies of Gemini. Morocco is French speaking as well. Very cool. Yeah, I was reading up on, I don't know if I should touch this topic, but I was reading up on Wikipedia about the history of anti-Semitism. And I don't like to say, I mean, because part of it was talking about the Moroccan slaughters of Jewish people, but it's horrible to say that, because it doesn't mean everyone from Morocco does that, or that's happened at all times. This is just a specific component. This is one of the problems I have with many podcasts where people talk about an entity as if that entity contains everyone who's responsible for the act of that entity, which are two very different things. It's like someone says, what's Australia like? And I say, well, Australia's full of racists. Well, yeah, it is full of racists, but it doesn't mean that every person you meet is going to be one. It means the majority will not be, in fact. But I've just applied a description in what you would call a scalar as opposed to a vector. So a scalar is sort of like when you apply a number and that number applies to the whole region evenly. That's not the best description, but it's something like that. And that, of course, gives an inaccurate description, because you're taking, in many cases, a perceived average. And that perceived average is number one perceived and number two an average. So the perception really makes most of the conclusion. Are there many Lebanese descents in Australia? In Sydney, I think there's about 300,000. And altogether, maybe 500,000, I think. That could have changed, because I read that number many years ago, 10 years ago or so. The Lebanese that came to Australia up to 1975 were mostly the Semitic Christian, those of Christian descent, who don't identify with Arabism. And after 1975, when the Civil War began, then there was a large influx of Arabic Lebanese or Arabic Muslim Lebanese. And now in Sydney, it's about 50-50 in terms of population between those two. But what's also interesting is I was talking to my cousin in Lebanon, who now identifies as being part of the Arabic world. And that's very different to the diaspora, of Lebanese, of predominantly Maronites, the Maronite Lebanese, who would consider themselves Semitic and non-Arabic, still consider themselves that way, I think, in the diaspora. But in Lebanon itself, they've sort of accepted the Arabic title, and that they're part of this pan-Arabic culture, which is fascinating, because this is my own first cousin. So genetically, you know, there's a lot of similarities, and appearance-wise, she also appears like me, sort of a Semitic appearance, not Arabic appearance. Le Liban, yeah, parfait. And yet she can identify with a completely different culture based upon her 30 years of living there and my 30 years of living here, or 40 years, sorry, of living here. Well, 30, because I lived in Lebanon for a long time. But even that psychological divergence that can happen between, so Lebanon, I've been about 40 times to Lebanon. and all together, yeah, many years. I went to Lebanon the first time in 1987 when I was 6 during the Civil War. So the airport was taken by Hezbollah. So we, as not being of Hezbollah, had to take a plane to Cyprus, and then from Cyprus we had to take a boat to the. It was at the time was the Christian side, because they were, unfortunately they were dividing the country between the Christian and Muslim side. So we had to go take a boat up to Jouni and get to Lebanon that way. Cyprus is divided, of course, yes, between Turkish and the Greek section. But this is more. This is another example of hypocrisy in the world. It's okay for some parts of the world to be occupied, like Northern Ireland, by the British, but it's not okay for Turkey to steal part of Cyprus. These sort of double standards that we see, but of course they'll be justified by people who have the guns. So what do you do besides let it go? What else can you do? Anyway, how's Michael Aoun? I wouldn't have a clue. I have no dabbling in Lebanese politics. I, to be honest, couldn't care less. I find the whole sectarian system to be ridiculous, and but there's a reason for it, of course. Apparently, there was a study done recently of mass DNA analysis of the Lebanese population, and they found that the populations prior to the adoption of their various religions were already disparate. So there were distinct genetic markers in certain populations, which each inherited their religions after that, which is quite interesting because it shows that maybe the difference in genetics and culture might have led to the reason that people decided to take on a certain religion, or it could have just been that they were all in one location, and that location was more susceptible to the Arabic culture, for example, than the other side. But yeah, it's quite fascinating. Look, in my view, it's not really a country. It's a region where different ethnicities that have been separated for thousands of years all live, and they all have a history of being horrible to each other and desperately view their identity as something completely different. We have some that see themselves as Western, and others as Arabic, and other sort of things. And you can't. I don't see how you can have a country when people don't share a common identity or a common goal. It's just neighbors living next to each other. So who knows? Maybe they'll come up with a type of country that hasn't yet existed, a way, or maybe they just adopt. Well, they won't, but it would be interesting if they could adopt sort of a pluralistic sort of strategy where everyone could have their own view and yet live in the same country. But how's Beirut? Beirut is very beautiful, extremely beautiful, and the people are lovely. The people are beautiful. Yeah, I haven't been there since 2012. So I couldn't tell you recently, but I have spoken to I speak to my cousins quite regularly, and they update me, and my friend, I have some friends there too. So anyway, that is, I might go actually, because I'd like to get ready for bed. I've got to get up early, and I've got lots and lots to do for my first year of my PhD. It's very exciting, but it's also very difficult, a lot more difficult than I thought it would be actually. Even though my professors say that I'm well ahead of where I should be, but that's not enough for me. I need to be further ahead than I want to be. Somebody has just written in Arabic, shukran, and I'm like, ahlan wa sahlan. Absolute pleasure to talk to you, to both of you, and we'll talk to you next time. Now, for those of you on Heckle, you don't know, but I normally sign out with, take life one smack at a time. Peace be with both of you. All the best. Ciao, ma salame. Ciao.